in their criminal acts, whether at first they start off with minor misdemeanors and then they progress into assaults or arsons or felony crimes, it helps us with the investigative process. So with that, I know our time is limited. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen so I can go ahead and begin PowerPoint presentation. So please let me know if you can see this.
Yes, we can see it.
So first, one of the questions that I always get is, what is a hate crime and what is a bias incident? So right now, my objective is obviously to define what a hate crime, what a bias incident is, the importance of reporting, and how does the Montgomery County Police Department handle these incidents. So first, I'm going to move you guys over so I can see. So the definition of a hate crime is, one, it's in two parts. It has to be a criminal act. Okay, it can be an assault, it can be vandalism, a trespassing, but it has to be a criminal act. And then it's motivated by the offender's bias against the victim's race, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity. So we call that the protected classes. In the state of Maryland, it adds homelessness to the bias motivation types. Montgomery County does not recognize homelessness in the protected class. And I will say not yet, because I always tell, members of the community, if you feel strongly, please go to the county executive, go to the county council, go to the state senators, and go to your legislature and advocate for a change in the law. And I'll be speaking further down on the presentation about how people advocated for changing the hate crime and the bias incident laws, and we have 2 new additions that came about last year. So it's not a separate and distinct crime. So hate itself is not a crime. So we've had many incidents and reports in which somebody is called a name, a vile name, and because there isn't that criminal act, it doesn't make it itself a hate crime. So instead, we call it a bias incident. We still document it. So if we tell people, if you're in doubt, please call the police department, call the non-emergency number, have an officer come out, speak to an officer, and have it documented. So what is not protected? Political affiliation is not protected. Occupation, police officer, lawyer, doctor, all those are not protected. They're not part of the protected classes. And the reason I mentioned political affiliation is during the election, we had many reports of signs, yard signs, political affiliation yard signs that were placed in front of your house that were stolen, were vandalized. Now, if it was stolen, obviously it's a crime, it's a theft, but we have to link that whether it was motivated by the suspect's, bias against a protected class, and political affiliation is not a protected class. So we couldn't charge that person with a hate crime. However, that person can still be charged with a theft. So we investigate all incidents of bias in order to determine the appropriate charges. We work with the state's attorney's office. They have a group, it's the community outreach unit, in which they have attorneys who go out in the community and they deal with different crimes that are affecting the community. One of these is hate crimes and bias incidents. So if it is a hate crime, it is investigated by the respective district station detectives. So for example, in 1D, in the 1st district, there was a synagogue that was vandalized. So the primary jurisdiction would be that the 1st district detectives would be investigating that hate crime. Bias incidents usually are followed up by the patrol officers from their respective districts, or the community engagement division, or the community service officers from the respective districts. So how do we go out and try to combat hate crimes and bias incidents? 3 things: education, engagement, and enforcement. So education, what we are doing here today, going out and talking to many different groups, interfaith association, homeowners association, schools, as Loretta, I don't know if Loretta has spoken to you about the committee, but there was a time, I think it was 2019, I have to go back and look at the numbers, the most highest incidents of bias related incidents were coming out of high schools. So that says to us that we have to work with MCPS and not just the police department, but also community members, and try to educate our youth as to what they're doing, what they're saying is wrong. And I believe the highest incident of the crime is vandalism, whether it's scratching something on the desk or writing something on the wall, whether it's a swastika or writing a name on the desk. That is the highest number of a criminal act, which is vandalism. And I'll go into further in what the law of vandalism encompasses. But we haven't had our report out yet. So this is another, I wrote the website on the bottom. So each year, MCPD, we post a hate crime and bias incident report. And it tells you, and it goes in depth on the various incidents that occurred in the past year. So 2020, we're still working on it to try to get the most accurate facts and figures, and also to introduce the new law that was changed in October of 2020, the two new laws that were changed in 2020. So we wanted the state's attorney to review it first before we put it live. So if you go to our website, montgomerycountymd.gov, go under public safety, police department, there are reports. So I will just highlight a few figures. For example, in 2019, there were 114 reported bias incidents. So that's 22.6% more than bias incidents reported in 2018, which was only 93. So if you go onto the website and the reports, they're listed there by year. The report will tell you, it breaks down basically the bias incidents that occurred each month. And this is important to us because when we look at some of the incidents that occurred in our MCPS schools, we noticed that there was a particular month, I believe it was March and April, in which the incidents were very high. And we wondered why. And so we reached out to MCPS, and we found out that that was when they were going through the section of World War II. And they were learning about Nazi and Hitler. And so that's kind of gives us an idea of why we had such a high number of incidents of bias incidents occurring in schools. So that says to us that we have to work with our partners at MCPS in order to work with students and the teachers, that during that section when they hit it, they have to be, the youth have to be explained a little bit more how it affects people and not just given an overview of the history. In addition, it also breaks down the crimes based on race, ethnicity, the types of crimes, vandalisms, whether there were assaults, simple assaults, or thefts. So if you look there, it breaks it down to every type of crime and the percentages. And of course, it gives you an explanation of what happened each month. Social media is another way in which we're educating the public. I think everybody has a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok even. We haven't gone to TikTok yet, but I mean, we use, and Nextdoor. Nextdoor is one of the neighborhood apps that I recommend everybody get, because we're constantly putting information on the neighborhood app of anything that is occurring in the neighborhood. So right here, this is a video in which we partnered up with various agencies in order to combat some of the bias incidents and hate crimes that were starting to arise last year. Let me see if I can play it. And please let me know if you can hear the volume.
No, we can't.
Can you not?
No, we're not hearing
No,
the
it's
volume.
not hearing the volume.
Can you play it, Loretta? I can hear it on my end. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, I think this has to be set up at the beginning, and that's why I asked about it. Let me take yours down.
Okay.
Sorry about the technical problem, folks. If you unshare your screen, I will share my screen and see if it comes off any better in mine.
There you go.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
I'm still always impressed we can do this.
I know.
Okay, now I have to move this over here.
So
I
if you
should-
just, yeah, just scroll down
I
to the
should have
black
mentioned
screen.
to everyone too that that we are recording this.
Keep going,
So let's
Loretta.
see. Yeah, no, I don't know where.
You got to scroll it right there. That scroll right there. Yeah, there you go.
There. Okay, is that it?
Yep.
Okay, now let me try that. There.
I can hear it.
Nope.
Oh.
Make it louder.
Sometimes if you go to Zoom and click on the three buttons and click on more, and then you'll see a sign that says share computer audio. Sometimes that helps.
Sorry, is it not sharing audio?
No.
Okay, let me see. Someone was telling me what do I do? What, 3 dots?
Yeah, so go to let me see. Go, I don't know where it appears on your screen, but it might be you know, where you can do more things.
Enable editing.
Okay.
No, enable editing is for the PowerPoint itself, but I'm talking about for the sharing the sound. So when you go to more, you go to more in your Zoom settings.
Well,
So you're right now you're not in your Zoom settings. Right now you're in your PowerPoint settings.
Yeah.
okay.
So click escape, and that should there you go.
Well, it
And then
got me out of the video.
Yeah.
Should I take down the screen?
you don't necessarily have to, but if you go to more in your Zoom settings, you'll see
Amy,
you'll
do you
s-
know how to do this?
That's fine. I know we're limited on time.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, we can try playing it at the end.
Ah, I see it. Okay.
You got
So,
it?
let's see. Edit settings.
Loretta, we could hear it. It just wasn't very loud.
Oh, well, that's a different matter. I can just increase the volume. It's loud
Yeah,
for
at
me, but
bottom, it has a place to increase
Yeah.
it. It's
okay,
51.
I thought you weren't hearing it at all. Let's try this again, and I'll reduce my own volume. And that way it won't blast me out. Sorry about that. What I heard was it wasn't coming through at all. Is that better?
Not much.
You need to make it as loud as possible.
well, that doesn't, being loud also works, but if you go to share computer sound, which is under the more settings in Zoom, share computer sound, that will make a difference. People will be able to hear it better.
Okay, off of my sound.
No, not from your sound, but in the Zoom settings,
Mm.
there's a place that says more.
Yeah,
from
no,
the-
I've got that, but which sound are you saying? Because I've increased the volume on the video itself.
Okay, so that's good. Now the next step is when you go to more on the Zoom settings, there's one down at the bottom, it should be, that says share computer sound.
Share sound. Okay, and that will share my sound?
Yes.
Okay, let me bump up the volume on my computer then. Thank you. I don't know who's giving me the coaching, but. Okay, let's try one more time. And then
religion, gender, sexual
Yeah.
orientation, homelessness, or
Yes.
disability.
Okay.
You
Yep.
might want to zoom out.
Community battles the coronavirus, there is another virus we need to confront.
And that is the virus of hate, bigotry, and xenophobia.
The most recent events of injustice and death shine a spotlight on the need to confront hateful behavior.
Due to misinformation and lack of understanding, Asian Americans have become the victim of aggression, discrimination, and hostility.
Montgomery County does not tolerate racism, hate, discrimination, or violence toward any group of people, regardless of our race, color, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, homelessness, or disability.
If you see or experience a hate or bias-related incident, it is important that you report it to the local police.
You can reach the Montgomery County Police non-emergency line at 301-279-8000. In case of an emergency, dial 911.
The Montgomery County Police Department is committed to making sure that each and every one of our citizens and community members are treated with the utmost amount of respect.
And remember,
bigotry has no place in Montgomery County.
We are all
in this together.
Okay, I have stopped sharing. And so, Lieutenant, you can share yours.
Yes, thank you. So that's one of the examples in which we partnered up with various agencies in Montgomery County in order to make that PSA, and which was aired. I know the Office of Human Rights was highlighting it in their Facebook page and saying with the Montgomery County Police Department. So let's see if I can move on. Okay, now okay, education. So as you can see to the left, that's our pamphlet, the Montgomery County Police Department Response to Bias and Hate. We usually pass those out. It's on our website. We pass it out to every event that we, community engagement, also the Montgomery County Police Department attend. And then to the right is just the front page of our annual report. And again, 2020 should be out hopefully within the next couple of weeks. Engagement. So another way Montgomery County Police Department helps combat hate crimes and bias incidents is through our events, whether it's attending meetings and also providing reports at the Community Against Hate Violence, Office of Human Rights, NCPS, career days. We also have an African American Liaison Committee, Latino Liaison Committee, and we're starting to start an LGBTQ plus community liaison meeting in order to inform the community and also just have an open forum. If people have any questions or concerns, or even if they think that they might be a victim, to come forward, feel comfortable, and have that opportunity to go ahead and let us know. And then we can go ahead and move accordingly. And here's engagement. We do a lot with our interfaith population. And enforcement. So this is a big chunk because there are many ways in which we enforce hate crimes and bias incidents. So in this, I know someone had a discussion about destroying the Black Lives Matter signs. So we had a rash last year in the summer, we had a rash in the Kent Mill community in the 4th District of people who were getting their Black Lives Matter lives stolen off their front lawn. And then someone would put stickers on their cars, bumper stickers on their vehicles. So obviously stealing it from your front lawn is theft. And the sticker placed on the bumper, it depends. It could be considered a vandalism. However, if there's no permanent damage to the property or to the vehicle, then there isn't. It isn't considered a vandalism. So we had a detective work the case. There were several victims that came forward in that neighborhood. And then we found out that it was a person who lived in the neighborhood who was the son of a rabbi from the local synagogue in the area. And he was charged accordingly. So because during his interrogation, he did not disclose whether or not he was doing this because he was motivated by hate. He was just doing it just because he was a knucklehead and he wanted to go ahead and just cause this strife. So I believe he was not charged with a hate crime because again, Black Lives Matters, it's considered a political affiliation, and thus it wasn't a hate crime, at least by the legal standard and by the state of Maryland in which we report all these numbers to. They did not consider that a hate crime. So theft, that's one crime. It's a misdemeanor, but it's still a crime nevertheless. We also have trespass. So this is a lot that we get a lot of questions of. I don't know if everybody remembers a couple of years ago, we were having reports of signs from the KKK. They were in Ziploc baggies and they had bird seed inside the baggies. And that was, it didn't mean anything. It was just to weigh them down so they can be tossed on someone's front lawn and they wouldn't blow away. But trespassing is one thing. If somebody comes onto your property, it's against the law. However, the only caveat is they have to be given notice. So you could quickly come out and say, please, I want you to get off my lawn. You can't come on, no trespassing, and they still do, then obviously, you know, they can be charged with trespassing. Or what we tell everybody is to have a sign that's clearly posted in your front yard, whether it's near your mailbox, if it's on your signpost or fence post, or even in your storm door. You can get them at Home Depot, Ace Hardware, that just says no trespassing. That clearly states that it gives the person notice that they cannot be on your property. That's trespassing continued. Malicious destruction of property. So this is what I was talking about before, about the crimes that occurred in Wheaton, because they were putting bumper stickers and the bumper stickers were coming off, they were not having permanent damage to the property. We could not charge them with vandalism. There were some vehicles though, in which it had to be scraped off. So then we were able, but it's a case by case basis. Again, this is malicious destruction of property. We have graffiti. This is also, we have many reports of signs being drawn, swastikas, nooses on different parts of buildings, different words being spray painted on. If it's a permanent painting, which to me, spray paint, it's permanent. It's really hard to get off unless you go and you sandblast it or if you paint over it with special paint. So that would be considered a permanent, I guess, etching or destruction. So these are the two new laws that we have that came into play October 20th. So this one I actually want to go over a little bit in depth. So this is the harassment and destruction of property. It wasn't in like the 2020 session of the Maryland General Assembly. What they did is they kind of modified this law, because I don't know if you remember, there was an incident, and this was called the bill known as the Second Lieutenant Richard Collins III's law. It was in honor of the Second Lieutenant Collins. So he was murdered, I believe, at the University of Maryland College Park on an unprovoked attack while he was walking with some friends. Okay, so the individual, the suspect who did this attack and ultimately killed Lieutenant Collins, was part of an alt-right Facebook group. It's the Alt-Right Nation. So there was a lot of evidence that the defendant was part of these extremist groups and had extremist views, had animosity towards African Americans and other racial and ethnic minorities, which fueled this attack, this hatred that he had. But because the law didn't have in it the statement motivated in whole or substantially in part by, which captures the cases where hate bias may be a significant part of the motivation for the criminal conduct, but need not be the only motivating factor. So I believe that the judge decided that this case was not going to be charged as a hate crime because of that. It left out that it was the only motivating factor, and in which in his case it wasn't, but because of the change of the law, it encompasses everything. And if you can find evidence such as Facebook posts, anything, any beliefs, anything, any participation of any demonstrations or protests, that will go into proving that this person had hatred towards the individual and thus being charged with a hate crime. Next. So this one is another one that was enhanced. So 10-301, it's damage associated to buildings. So this actually changed in which it prohibits affixing and inscribing an item or a symbol of hate. So this includes actual or even a depiction of a noose or a swastika, okay, on real or personal property that is publicly or privately owned without any express permission of the owner or occupant with the intent to threaten or intimidate any person or groups of people. So if you have a suspect that goes ahead and spray paints a swastika on a synagogue, now that is automatically a hate crime as opposed to just a vandalism, and then you have to prove whether or not his intent. The law makes it automatically a hate crime. And then that's my last slide. So this is questions. This is my contact information. So I always get, that's my cell phone, my county email address. I tell people, when in doubt, just call. We always document everything, every, incident of bias, because like I said, it helps us in the investigative process. And if for some reason you call 911, or if an officer comes out and tells you, you know what, yeah, but we're not going to write a report, please give me a call and I'll go ahead and I'll send the information to the appropriate, whether it's the community engagement division or whether it's to the district commander, and we'll make sure that it is documented. So does anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank you. So if you can post your questions in the chat box, we will be monitoring those and reading those out to Lieutenant Estrada. Thank you very much.
This is Carl Weichel, Lieutenant Estrada. The first question we have is regarding your last point is, if not to be covered soon, what are the consequences, sentences for parents to warn their kids? And I guess I might read into that is that form of a public service information that parents should know the law as a good citizen of the community to assist their children.
And can I ask you, Lieutenant, before you answer, can you unshare your screen? And
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Then you'll be on.
There you go. Sorry. We work with the community. So the police department, not only just the youth, but we also work with parents, and parents are key because, kids mimic what they see, kids mimic what they know. And so you have to explain to your children what these symbols of hate mean and what they mean to people who are victims of these symbols of hate, because it's traumatic. I've spoken to victims in which they're traumatized because they've never experienced anything like this before. And we assist them in getting counseling and getting help and trying to seek justice where they can. And whether it's talking about their experiences to, kids, to youths, and to tell them how they feel, because, you only know what you know, and we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes children don't know. They think that this is funny. They think that they're just, hey, whatever, it doesn't bother them. But in reality, when something like this happens, they get caught and we bring them in, they realize, that their choices have consequences. So I'll give you an example of, there was a vandalism in the 2nd district. It was in one of the high schools. I don't remember which school it was, but it was the second vandalism. There was the first vandalism that occurred. They drew swastikas, penises, and several other names. And then it happened again. And the second time, it was 3 suspects that did it. One of the suspects realized, okay, we shouldn't have done this, but they ran out of spray paint. So he didn't go and cover it up. All 3 go home. So he gets home and his parents are like, what's going on with you? Because they noticed that he was despondent. He was, just something was up. And so they asked him, and then he finally told them, he goes, look, Mom and Dad, this is what happened. This is what I did. And so the parents, to their credit, grabbed their son, drove him down to the 2nd district police station and said, hey, can we speak to a detective who's handling this vandalism? Because my son just told us that he was part of the 3 that did it. And so they brought him in and investigated it. And the school's handling it, because you have administrative penalties and you also have the criminal part of it. So that's one of the things in which we relied on parents, because the parents knew that it was wrong and they quickly told their son, look, you can't be doing this, and brought him to the police station. And without their help, we could have never have solved that, because there weren't cameras at that part of the school because they were doing construction.
Lieutenant, on the same theme of parents' engagement, is what about warnings by parents or other teachers or other adults about being in a Facebook hate group? Is that identified?
I will tell you again, social media is a cursing. It's a curse and a blessing because look at us. We can all come together in the meeting right now, and Zoom is part of social media, but it also is a curse because whatever is posted will stay there for a long time. So I will tell you that a lot of, I tell parents, being a parent is, it used to be like, being in the military is the toughest job in the world, but being a teacher and being a parent is also one of the toughest job in the world, but it's the most rewarding. Okay. Parents need to stop being friends, and they need to start being parents. And I tell them, you need to be nosy, you need to be a detective, because once your child lives under your house, it's fair game. So if they have a phone, make sure you have access to the phone, their social media. If they don't give you their password, there are apps that you can download that you can basically record their apps, record everything that they've seen, record their searches, and to see what they're posting and what they're sending. So definitely that parents and children need to keep that line of communication. And I will tell you, we had an incident in which there was it wasn't on the police department, it was a sheriff, a Montgomery County sheriff, and he graduated, I believe, 2 days after graduation. It came to light that when he was younger, there was a Facebook post, and it was like a snippet video of him using some racially charged language. Needless to say, he's not with the sheriff's department. So it does affect you. So whatever you post, it does affect you. One of the questions that employers are asking now is, do you have a social media page? If so, please give us the name. And if you disclose it, you disclose it. If you don't, they have people that can go ahead and run queries to try to track down the pages. A lot of people think, oh, I can hide my pages, I can block it, I can make it private. I was also a detective in special victims, and I was a runaway and missing children detective. So there are ways to get around it. Trust me, because I would find the kids that way.
There's another question also on that. Can parents proactively work with their children to remove their own earlier in life postings when it doesn't require a validation through an interview of a police department or other government agency?
You don't need the police's permission to take anything down from your child or your Facebook page. You can do it on your own. My suggestion is to write Facebook, because they do have there is a process in which you have to go and you have to write them a letter, tell them the circumstances in which they can go ahead and take that down and try to see if they can eliminate it at all. Because when we were having the protests, and a lot of these alt-right nation groups and the hate groups, and they were posting videos. So they went ahead and whatever trace they had of it, they took it down off social media.
Great. The next question is, what is the fine line between freedom of speech and hate speech?
So there is a fine line, okay? The fine, I'll tell you, we have incidents in which people have called people names, vile names. We've documented it, but because it doesn't have that criminal component, the criminal act, we can't charge them with anything. Unfortunately, they are at liberty to think and say. However, if they start threatening acts of mass violence, if they start threatening that individual, then it crosses the line. If they start repeatedly sending you letters, then you start going into harassment. And then once you get something like either the building blocks for harassment, you get the building blocks for threats of mass violence, we can work with the state's attorney's office to see what charges are appropriate.
Next question is, you had mentioned two symbols that were either illegal in the state or at least in Montgomery County, the swastika and the noose.
Yes.
Are there other ones, and what is the legal process to identify another or objectionable symbol?
So right now it's just the noose and the swastika based on historical events that have happened. If there are other symbols, then I definitely recommend you write the Maryland General Assembly, your state senator, because that's where it all started. Also the Office of the Attorney General. So when I'm still part of it, the Office of Attorney General has a task force and has several law enforcement agencies, and also the ADL has several other agencies who are represented, and they were integral in making these changes to the laws, because we had to go to Annapolis, we had to testify, and we had to tell them about certain cases. And so finally it was changed. So if you identify another symbol, I would definitely reach out, Office of Attorney General, and also the Maryland General Assembly, your state senator.
That is all we have on the chat. Are there any other questions our audience would like to put in?
And if not, that's fine. If you have any other questions along down the line, you have my number, you have my email address. But I cannot emphasize enough that we need to hear from you. I've been at community events and somebody says to me, hey, someone drew the N word, the S word, whatever word outside my, my work, or it was right there on the mailbox or whatever. I just crossed it off. And I was like, well, did you report it to the police? And they're like, no. Why? And I was like, because it helps us. And it helps us in our investigative process. It helps us in keeping the numbers to the state of Maryland, because we're required to report every incident to the state of Maryland, and also the FBI. In addition to that, it helps us build that bond, because I know there are a lot of immigrants in the community that still fear the police, especially with the political climate that what was going on, and it's still going on. And we want, everybody to know that they need to be, I hope they feel comfortable in coming to the police and just disclosing what has happened. And like I said, even if it doesn't rise to the level of a crime or criminal act, we still can get you resources that can assist you. Because going through an event like this, it is a traumatic event. It is.
Another question has just come in. Presumably words are also matter, not just symbol. This goes back to the swastika and the noose. And what words are the actual specific words that are identifiable as illegal? Of course, the symbols meant is publicly displaying them. Words is not necessarily publicly displaying them. But
yeah, it's not words, it's just the symbols itself.
Right. So as you explained before, a word in themselves is not a hate crime, right? It has to be used in a larger proactive context.
Now, if they change the law and include the N word or some other kind of word in there, then obviously that becomes a hate crime automatically. But as far as I know, somebody writing the N word on the side of a building, it's if we can find that it's motivated by the suspect's hatred towards African Americans, then yes, we can go ahead and charge that as a hate crime along with a vandalism. But we still need that other, exactly, unless until the laws change. So that brings me up to 10304 with Second Lieutenant Collins' murder, because it was specifically, it said that it had to be motivated by that. That's why he couldn't be charged with the hate crime. Thus, that's why they had to change the law, so motivated in whole or substantially in part. So I don't know what the judge was thinking. I mean, they had enough evidence to think that you have all these things on social media and what he was participating in. I thought that would be motivating as a whole, but the judge didn't think so. And that's why he wasn't charged with a hate crime.
Thank you. Next question. Would you repeat what is the difference in punishment for a regular crime versus a hate crime?
It's enhancement. It's just an enhanced punishment. So it depends on what the crime is.
We had a a member asks, is it possible to get a copy of your slide presentation?
Unfortunately, this will be live, but I didn't give permission for the slide presentation because the laws are constantly changing. So I know we have 4 new hate crime bills up before the floor because they've started testifying, and I know they need to make a decision quick. So that's why we're always changing them or enhancing them. So that's why I said no on the slide presentation, because I'm always updating it. And I don't want to give wrong information, or I don't want wrong information to be out there to the
To be out
public.
there. Now, we are recording this session.
Yes.
This is Loretta, and we do have a Facebook group for the Contemporary Issues Forum. It is called Contemporary Issues Forum, Coffee, Conversation, and Controversy. And if you can't find it on Facebook by searching Contemporary Issues Forum, let me know and I can post a link in your message.
I just saw a question pop up from Kim. Yes, I do. Hold on a second. So they do have most similar definitions and punishments for hate crimes. And then some, like I said, I would check with your whichever state it is. Some still have the blanket language, whereas like the one that we had before. But now the language is changing. So in order to encompass acts, stuff on social media, any participation in any hate groups, in order to build that case for hate crime.
Can I just mention also, there was several years ago, maybe even a decade ago, there were a series of tire slashings in the Silver Spring Wheaton area. And we were involved, the Office of Human Rights was involved in sort of supplying information to the police and the court. And that perpetrator, it was one man, and he was slashing tires of people he knew to be Latino or suspected to be Latino. One of them actually was Arab, but that went all the way through the courts, and he got a 6-month sentence in which he served, and that was because somebody had a security camera. But otherwise they didn't have enough evidence. They wouldn't have had enough evidence without the security footage.
Now, I am curious to know, and actually, good question, Loretta. Good point, but I wanted to ask the assistant state's attorneys if that case was charged now with the new changes and the new different laws, would it still be the same or would it be different?
Yeah, I don't know. Are they on? Is somebody on?
No, but that's someone in the future I would definitely bring. I'll give you the name, Linda Earle and George Sims.
Okay.
Definitely, because they can give you more insight at the legal process.
Yeah.
I mean, we assist them with the enforcement, but when it comes to charging, we always run it by them just because we work in concert with them.
But I will find the article on that trial and post it in the comments for this presentation on the Facebook group.
This is Carl. I have a question to both Lieutenant Estrada as well as Loretta. Is there a public information campaign directed specifically to people in communities that aren't officially citizens of the United States, that they understand that they have inherent rights to report hate crimes?
Laura, yes, we do. So we have the Latino liaison meeting in which we have representatives of the Hispanic and the Latino community come in once a month, and we talk to the chief the chief is there and many other assistant chiefs and detectives, and we talk about many crimes, issues that are affecting the Hispanic community and also Montgomery County community as a whole. So we've done outreach to them, but there still is that stigma. I mean, when I was a detective, one of the for domestic violence, it's the threats that I'm going to call ICE and turn you in. You're going to go back to your country. So a lot of victims won't, report that they're being in a domestic violence situation or that they're being abused as children because of that fear. So we have a lot of fear in which, they're like, hey, go ahead and tell the police that I've done this and this and this. And then you'll go back and you'll see, I'll make you pay. We also, what we're doing, we're coming in, and that's not just with hate crimes and bias incidents. We're also having issues with fraud. Right now, fraud is running rampant, especially with COVID and the vaccine benefits that have been going out there. A lot of and so they're plaguing some of the population and the immigrant population because they know they're fearful about reporting it. So that's one of the key things that Montgomery County Police Department does is we do outreach, whether it's officers who are from the same ethnic background, who speak the same language, to go out there in the communities and educate the public that, you know, it's okay to report it and we're here to help you.
And
There's
many
another-
times these immigrants come from countries where the government is very heavy-handed. And so they have a fear of going to the government at all for any reason.
Yeah. Or it's the police, in which, you know, they're in Spanish, la mordida, you know, they're on the bite. They're, you know, corrupt. So some countries, police aren't seen in the greatest light. So that's where it comes to us, our job as police officers, and even the community engagement division, and just all of us as a department, to try to change that point of view by doing outreach. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
There was a comment from another member that said, regarding the details that you explained by proactive parenting with our children, of managing their Facebook accounts, iPhone, that within our own River Road Unitarian Universalist Community Parenting Group, that we should be also accessing this information as parents, passing this down within our youth programs.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to email this to Loretta. So this is something, hold on, I'm cropping it so you guys know. It's the 15 apps parents should know about. So I don't know if you can see it. It's backwards, I'm sorry. I will go ahead and send that to Loretta via email so she can send it to everyone. So these are 15 apps parents should know, because and I'll give you an example. It's calculator %. So it looks like a calculator. It's on the bottom here. So everybody, if you can see it, it's kind of like a calculator that you would see on your iPhone. But in reality, it's an app that hides the faceplate of your phone. So if you pick up your child's phone, oh, there's a beautiful picture of me and my daughter. Oh, that's great. But if you press a code, the real faceplate comes up and you have all these different apps. So it allows you to conceal the apps that your children are really accessing, and it just gives you a fake faceplate. So I will send this to you, Loretta. I'm sending it to you now. So if you can pass it off
I certainly
your
will.
parents and everybody, because parents need to know, and it gives you information. And I will tell you, some of these apps are very law enforcement friendly, in that if you go to their website, they have educational information for parents, because they don't want their apps being used in criminal acts or being used to lure kids. So I remember there was a, oh my gosh, there was an app in which you could text. Kick. It was a Kick app. So it was very popular several years ago, but because it was being used in child exploitation cases and human trafficking cases, they actually decided to do away with the app, because it was like a way that you could go and reach somebody and you know, you're thinking you're talking to a 12-year-old kid. No, it's like a 50-year-old kid trying to lure another, you know, a child to come and meet you or to give pictures. So once that was, you know, found out, they just did away with the app. So Kick isn't around anymore, but new apps keep coming up. So, all right, Loretta, I just sent it to you.
Okay, thank you. And if there's a link, you could send me that as well, and I can post that. Thank you. I think there might be another chat. Let me check.
Another chat is, are parents liable if their kids use hate speech or symbols on social media posts?
That would depend on what they say. Generally, no, but again, it would depend, because it is your child. You're not going to be charged unless, I mean, again, it depends on what the crime is. I know parents weren't charged in the case in which there was a son living with them, and he had a weapon. And because I'm trying to think of the case in Clarksburg. I don't know if anybody remembers the case in Clarksburg. Child brings a gun to school, but the parents had guns, in their house. And I believe the parents were not charged for providing access. So it would depend on the case. But surely not so much liable as in criminal liability, but think about it. Kind of reflects on the parents. If your child is putting stuff on and the parents aren't aware, and if they are aware, they're not doing something to stop it.
Okay, then the last thing I will mention is that in Chapter 27 of the Montgomery County Code, which is what the Office of Human Rights enforces, there is a compensation fund for victims of hate crimes, primarily vandalism, but the statute reads there must be personal injury or damage to property. And when that happens, then a victim can put a claim on this fund and get reimbursed for any reparations that they need. For example, if there's a swastika on the synagogue wall and they have to pay someone to scrub and paint over the wall, they can put a claim to get reimbursed for those costs.
Yes, I believe there was a St. Catherine's in Wheaton. They were a victim of an arson. It was a couple that was doing these arsons. They were also the couple that did the damage to the swastika in Rockville. And they were also assisted because they had to rebuild several, altars. They had to clean up. And prior to that, they had many of their statues spray painted.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It's been very informative. And as I said, it's been recorded. I will post it on our Facebook group. And we wish you a pleasant day.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to everyone. Again, my number is there, my email. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out. If I don't know the answer, I'll get you to someone who does.
And our final note is that our next Contemporary Issues Forum meeting is 4 weeks today on Sunday, April 11th. And remember, it's always the second Sunday of the month. And you'll see announcements of that in the River Road newsletter prior to it. And we thank you very much, Lieutenant Estrada, for spending this valuable time on your Sunday. And we will always appreciate that. And please feel to visit us online to our other Contemporary Issues forums, or when we are back in the fall, any Sunday morning, we would welcome you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
hope
you.
you don't have much business.
Yes. Enjoy this spring Sunday, everyone.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Lieutenant.
Stay well and safe, everyone, please. Take care. Bye.